Brings up Salvador Perez with a chance to put the Royals on the board early.
Broke his bat. And Wilson, did he drop it on purpose? Here's a play at the plate, and Junior is safe. Wow.
And now it's second and third, one out for Lawrence Butler. The infield comes in.
2-2. High drive to deep right. Forget about that baseball. It's onto the bird. And history has a chance to repeat itself. Jack Caglione comes to the plate as the potential tying run with the Royals down to their final out, much like he did on Sunday against the Angels when he hit a game-tying two-run homer.
2-2 pitch.
Strike him out. Player Jr. picks up the save, and the A's win 5-2.
Good morning, Kansas City. This is New Day with SSJ on Sports Radio 810 WHB. It's Thursday, April 30th, 2026. Oh boy. Last day April. May is tomorrow. That flew by. Today on the show, we'll talk to our MLB insider, Buster Olney. He'll join us just after 7 o'clock to talk baseball. We'll get another NFL draft wrap-up with Adam Kaplan, who nailed it. Last week at this time, he correctly predicted that the Chiefs would be selecting Mansour Delane, corner out of LSU, with their first-round pick, and Adam Kaplan was correct. So we'll get his thoughts on that pick, that trade-up to get Delane, and then the rest of the 2026 draft class. Also later on in studio, we'll have Gary Dieter and Anthony Sherman, former Chiefs wide receiver and Chiefs fullback, in studio with us like they are each and every Thursday. And then Jesse Newell from The Athletic will talk more football with us at 9 o'clock. The Royals, unfortunately, saw their winning streak snapped last night in Sacramento as they lost to the A's 5-2. Well, what are you going to do? Michael Wacha wasn't great. Took him 105 pitches to get through 5 innings. And the Royals' offense didn't do enough. Made it interesting late, but couldn't get to A starter Luis Severino. Severino was too good, which is odd considering his ERA is over 5 and he's not as well. You know what? He does have flashes where he can be really good at times, and last night was one of them. So, but for the most part, and I know they won the game on Tuesday. But if you remember, Deebs, through 9 innings, they had just scored 1 run, and then they popped off with a 3-run home run from Bobby Wood Jr. in the 10th. And so that got them to 4. But in the regular 9, they had only scored 1. And then last night, they only scored 2. And so that's the continuing theme with the Royals on the road. They don't score very much on the road. They entered Wednesday. In 13 road games, what were they averaging per game, Deebs?
1.7 runs, something like
that. Not that bad.
Okay.
They're not, but still 2.6.
Okay.
The Royals entered Wednesday having scored 2.6 runs per game in 13 road games, which ranks as the lowest mark in the majors. And then they went out for their 14th game and they scored 2. So that went down. They have scored 4 runs or fewer now in 13 of their 14 road games. So they cannot consistently score runs on the road. Period. Like I said, they got to 4 on Tuesday in game 1 of this series, but it took them 10 innings. The only run they scored in the regulation 9 was Salvi's home run. So, no good. They got to figure out a way to get the offense going on the road. And it would help if, number 1, Vinny Pasquantino was healthy, and then number 2, he could actually turn things around and get hot. First things first, though, he was not in the lineup as a precaution. He was not in the lineup Wednesday after he left Tuesday's game early with low back tightness, something that he said he's been dealing with for a while. But Matt Quatrero said that yesterday he was better than he was on Tuesday night. He was available off the bench, but they're just trying to be cautious and play for the long haul as opposed to putting him back out there the day after he left the game early with lower back tightness. And Scott Sharp, Royals assistant GM, who was on the show yesterday, had mentioned that they didn't think this was going to require a stint on the IL, and Matt Quatrero backed up those thoughts when he spoke with the media yesterday in Sacramento. So if you got nervous when you saw that Vinny wasn't in the lineup and you're thinking he's headed to the IL, at least not yet, at least not now. And so cross your fingers there that what Matt Quatrero said was true. They just held him out just to be safe, and hopefully they can get it back in there and help him. And look, going into the series, all I said was the Royals, even though the record doesn't indicate it, I think the Royals are better than the A's. Just go out and win a series. It would be great if they rattled off 7 or 8 in a row and completely erased that previous losing streak that they had, but just put some series wins together and get yourself right. They got that sweep against the Angels. If they can win this rubber match and get 2 out of 3 against the A's, then you got to be feeling good about where they're heading. Last night, Waka, 5 innings, 8 hits, 4 runs, 4 walks, 5 Ks. Avila pitched out of the bullpen, gave up a couple of hits and a run. Would love to see him get things going. I think he can have the bullpen a lot, but he's got to show it. So the Royals lose 5-2. We'll continue with the injury news because, look, going into the season, one of the things that we talked about the Royals having depth at starting pitching, and that being a strength. They had that depth in the offseason, and we thought that that was going to lead to the Royals trading a starting pitcher for some type of offense. You had the rumors around Jaron Duran for a long time with Boston, but it was pretty clear from reports out of Boston they wanted Cole Reagans, and the Royals weren't interested in trading Cole Reagans, especially for Jaron Duran, so that didn't happen. I would have loved for them to get Taylor Ward. That was the guy that I had circled, and Ward's having a pretty damn good year with Baltimore, but it didn't happen. And then they found a way to acquire what they felt was an outfield upgrade in Isaac Collins and not give up a starting pitcher, still giving up an important pitching asset in Angel Zerpa, but that's the route that they went. Hopefully Collins could be the Collins from the first half of last year, not the second half, a guy that put up enough production to finish 4th in the NL Rookie of the Year voting, and they get him and only have to give up a reliever. Well, and they added Mears, too, in that trade. And then you hope, okay, and then if they get into the season and have any injuries or decide, you know what, we didn't do enough to address the offense, we got to go out and make a move, they still have that starting pitching depth to trade from. Well, the starting pitching depth has been attacked, has been limited now officially. Because if you remember, Ryan Bergert got hurt at the end of the season, and you hurt his forearm, and you usually hear that and you're thinking, okay, that sucks. This can end up being Tommy John surgery, because many times the forearm soreness or forearm tightness, that's the first thing you hear, and that eventually leads to a diagnosis of needing Tommy John surgery. I fully expected that in the offseason, but it didn't happen. And then all of a sudden, they say he's ready to go for this season. Well, it didn't last long. And so Ryan Bergert, who, and again, one of the starting, and look, guess what? One of these guys, or a couple of these guys, they're going to go on the IL at some point, because you don't keep your full 5-pitcher rotation healthy all season long. That's just not how baseball works. And so the anticipation is, okay, when we need a guy, Ryan Bergert is up next. Stephen Kolek, both guys they got in the Fermin trade, both guys showed that they could pitch effectively in the rotation last year. He'd be next. That's 7 deep. You feel pretty good about that. Kolek gets hurt coming out of spring, but he's back. But now Ryan Bergert, he's gone for the year. And he was expected at some point, and it didn't happen yet, but he was going to be a major contributor this year for the Royals. And certainly he gave them the possibility of dealing a starting pitcher, and it might have been him. Who knows? But they have and they still have the ability. Now it's just, they don't have the numbers. They don't have the depth now, because Bergert ends up now having Tommy John surgery. He made just 3 starts for Omaha before he landed on the IL on April 10th. After going through initial imaging, he went for a second opinion over the past couple of weeks, and that led to the surgery yesterday. And so that sucks. And so he will be gone for a while. A full ulnar collateral ligament repair, and he wasn't it. Besides Ryan Bergert being now gone for the year, and then, into next year, Ben Cadorna is also out with surgery. He underwent, oh boy. Deebs, if you want to handle this, you can. Olecranon stress fracture repair. Does that sound good to you?
Not quite.
Well, that's what he had.
Yeah, it sounds like 8 to. I'm guessing here 8 to 12 months. I'd assume.
Both are expected to miss the rest of the season. Cadorna only made 1 start that lasted 2 innings at AAA this year before he was placed on IL on April 6th. So and I'm sure I'm butchering this. I apologize for not knowing the correct pronunciation. The Olecranon. It's the bony tip of the elbow, Deebs. How about that? We'll just say that. The bony tip of the elbow. It can fracture due to overuse, typically in throwing athletes. And the surgical option typically involves placing screws into the elbow to stabilize the fracture. So that's what happened with Ben Cadorna. Jeez. So Bergert, Cadorna both out for the year now with their surgeries. So now the next guy up, after the Royals have now watched their starting pitching depth shrink, they have Kolek, who is on his way back still from an oblique strain that he suffered in spring training. He was slated to make another rehab start in AAA that's going to take place, that took place yesterday, supposedly. He was scheduled to. So there you go. Could the Royals still make a trade for a bat? Yes. But it became more difficult, and that starting pitching depth that they were so excited about now it's not as deep. That sucks.
Yeah, vanishing right before our eyes.
Right. Berger was really good too, and I was excited about him. And look, and he still can be good down the road when he comes back. But I mean, I wouldn't have felt bad at all if he was in the rotation at any point this year.
He showed a lot of good promise last year when he filled in, and that's incredibly unfortunate.
It's just, I expected this at the end of last year. And now, clearly, in retrospect, it would have been much better had they just decided, okay,
bite the bullet, get
let's
it done.
just go. And he could have been well into the rehab process. But they thought they could get through it. And like I said, he came back, made a few starts, back on the IL, second opinion, surgery, out for the year. So there you go. But hopefully the bats that they have right now can figure things out. And look, they still have, if they wanted to go that route, they could dip into their farm system, or they could still trade a pitcher. But now it's, you had that comfort level. Well, if we trade a starting pitcher, we could just slide Berger to Kolek right in there. Or trade Berger.
Yeah, you're not playing with house money anymore.
No. Nope. And now you've also, and not that this is still you're losing depth on the Major League roster. This comes a day after we find out that Jonathan India, who they were hoping could turn things around and be more productive at second base, he's out for the year with his labrum surgery. And so now you're relying on Michael Massey and or Nick Lofton to provide an upgrade in production at second base, and you don't know if Massey can stay healthy and Lofton can be productive enough to not have that be a hole offensively. And so clearly that's a place they could upgrade, but they just don't have the bullets now to go out and make a deal. They still can, though. Like I said, look, they're still deep in catching prospects. I mean, you got a future Hall of Famer in Salvi, and you got the guy that's going to be the catcher, halfway right now with the present, and certainly the catcher of the future, and Carter Jensen. So they could trade a catching prospect. They still got some opportunities to make a deal, but it became increasingly difficult after the recent injury news with Bergert and Cardona being out now for the season with their surgeries. All right, so there you go. Royals lose to the A's 5-2 and continue to get bit by the injury bug. But on the bright side, they won game one of the series, and they're going for the series victory in Sacramento. And you don't have to wait long to check it out because the game is an afternoon game. Thank you. Yay! No staying up, no falling asleep and having to figure out what the hell I missed. So thank you. 2:05 first pitch in Sacramento. Noah Cameron on the mound. Could use a good start from Noah Cameron. And the Royals will be facing Jeffrey Springs, who's pretty good. So 3-2 with a 3.79 ERA. There it is, Deebs. Go get the series win and move on. And move on to Seattle. All right, we'll take a break. Back after this on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Welcome back to the show. I know the Royals didn't win, but I did dig the uniforms last night.
Yeah, both teams.
That was old school.
Yeah.
I loved it.
That was the first thing I thought of when I saw the game. I go, great uniform matchup tonight.
I just wish they always wore the powder blues on the road.
Yeah.
Like the old days. No,
They
but I
look
love
great
both
on the
uniforms.
road.
Yeah. By the way, and I will repost this, did you see in the, and I was watching live when this happened. Oh, man. In the fourth inning with Carter Jensen up at the plate, did you see that line drive that he pulled into the dugout that hit the EMT right in the balls?
I did see that.
That was oh, man, he got it good.
Ouchie.
Yeah. Yep. You want to see that at SSJ WHB? I just reposted that video a couple of times. He was seeking some medical attention. Walked it off, though. Had a smile on his face, but Royals training staff, it was a ground ball that got him right in the junk. You know? That was a case, Deebs, of 2 balls with 1 strike. So, if you've never seen that
And a
before.
foul ball will do it again.
Yeah. Oh, boy. And then also the story of the security guard, Teresa, that continued yesterday as Salvi and Bobby Witt Jr. presented her with a picture. And the picture was of Joe Goldberg interviewing Bobby Witt Jr. and Salvi giving Teresa a hug. And Bobby Witt Jr. signed it, "Sorry for the splash." And then Salvi signed it and said, "I love you," with a smiley face. And she was very happy to receive that. So, classy stuff from Salvi and Bobby Witt Jr. to present her with that autographed picture just a day after dumping ice-cold water on her as Salvi attempted his splash and Bobby Witt Jr. in his tremendous footwork able to get out of the way. So, a little rough to be over in the Royals dugout because Teresa was right by the EMT that got hit in the junk. So,
Yeah, it was like the inning after Joe Goldberg goes into detail about that story is when the paramedic got hit.
well, the paramedic was able to take care of himself, hopefully.
Yeah.
You would think. So that was good last night. Also, this was an interesting report from John Morosi. He said that one Major League Baseball trend to watch, and this is kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the first segment about the Royals maybe deciding that they need an upgrade offensively and perhaps second base could be that spot. John Morosi reported that he thinks that trade activity will be starting early this year. Dave Dombrowski told him, "I've had trade conversations earlier than I ever have. Other clubs haven't been doing very well either. Clubs have called around. And so maybe we could see an earlier trade market start to form this year, which I think could be interesting." And we'll talk to Buster Olney about that in the 7 o'clock hour. And he had said previously, a few weeks ago, that he felt like the Royals could be aggressive in the trade market, trying to go out and maybe add a piece to the bullpen. And I think especially until Carlos Estevez proves that he's healthy and he's back, then I think we can all agree they could use some help in the bullpen. But also I still think they should be looking for a bat. So we'll talk to Buster about that and see if he's heard the same thing about the possibility of the trade market forming a little bit early and there could be moves earlier than we're used to. So that could be fun. Because I think the Royals are going to have to do something. And the fact that no one has really jumped out and taken control of the AL Central, which has left the door open, even though the Royals have not played great baseball. It seems like they're in the process of turning things around. But the hole isn't too deep, and they can still consider themselves a factor in this division as long as nobody runs away with it. And that's the case around baseball. I mean, you look at the West, the A's they're playing right now. The A's are in first place at 16 and 14. They're their only team in the center in the West that's over 500. Everyone else is 500 and below. In the Central, nobody's above 500. Cleveland's 16 and 16, and that's it. And the Royals are only 3 games out. And so between the Central and the West, combine those two, the only team that's above 500 out of those 10, the A's, 16 and 14. Now you go over to the East, the Yankees are 20 and 11, but they have a game and a half advantage over Tampa, and then that's it. Those are the only 2 teams that are above 500. So 3 teams above 500 in the AL. And then you look at the Central and the National League, every team is above 500. Pittsburgh's in last place, and they're 16 and 15. Atlanta's 22 and 9. They're running away with the East. They have a 7-game lead over Miami. And then the Dodgers and the Padres are locked up in a tight one, 20 and 11, 19 and 11. Arizona's 3 over 500, so it's weird, man.
Yeah, a lot of people just bunched together. Gives us a lot of hope just so we can claw back and fight our way back to 500. You're right in the middle of things.
But then, like, who do you trade with? Because everyone's still alive. Like, everyone feels like they're a part of it, and so no one's really out of it.
Yeah, so who's going to be the seller in this case? Yeah.
Well, you can always go knocking on the Mets' door.
The Mets and the Phillies, the 2 teams with a lot of payroll and not a lot to show for it so far this season, I guess, yeah.
And look, the Royals had talked with the Red Sox previously in the offseason about a deal. The Red Sox cleaned house with their coaching staff and their manager, and they're 12 and 19, and they're sitting in last place, 8 games back. Did they decide to make a move? I mean, they already totally turned over their coaching staff.
Yeah,
So
if you're cleaning out the entire coaching staff, the pressure is clearly on you to maybe make more changes earlier rather than later. So you never know.
you can't fire all the players, but you can trade some of them.
Exactly.
All right, let's give something away to our 6 o'clock listeners. I mentioned that you can go see my son Richie St. John play with his the band that he's in, Dolomite. He's a bass player, and Dolomite's awesome. My favorite band in Kansas City. If you love 80s and 90s hip-hop and you love to dance and have a good time, well, they'll be playing 90s music tomorrow night at Grinders on the Crossroads. Beautiful outdoor venue. They're going to have a decade show with Disco Dick and the Mirrorballs playing music from the 70s, the Zeros playing music from the 80s, and then Dolomite playing music from the 90s. It's the first show of the season outdoors there at Grinders. So, and it looks like the weather's going to cooperate. And if you would like tickets, I'll give a pair of tickets away to caller number, and we'll go to break before we have to do it. So, Deebs, if you didn't notice, Jake's not here today, so Deebs wearing many hats, including producing the show, running the board, and answering the phone. And so if you want to come and hang out, I'll be there. I believe that I've received word that Steve St. John Sr. could be in attendance at a concert, which hilarity will ensue. 913-381-0810 if you want to go enjoy some great live music outdoors and hang out on Friday night down at Grinders. 913-381-0810, and you can go see the Decade Show with Dolomite headlining with my son on bass. 913-381-0810. Caller number 8 will be feeling great. We'll give you a pair of tickets, and if you don't win tickets, you can buy them at Ticketmaster. We'll take a break. Back after this on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Welcome back to New Day with SSJ on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Thank you so much for joining us. Coming up just after 7 o'clock, we'll have Buster Olney on the show. NFL insider Adam Kaplan at 7:30. 8 o'clock hour, Gary Dieter and Anthony Sherman. And then in the 9 o'clock hour, Jesse Newell from The Athletic will wrap up the draft, give us his thoughts on each pick, and then what happens next. Could they be still be active as far as adding to the roster via free agency? There's still some interesting names out there. Can they? Do they have the money to do it? And which draft picks will Jesse Newell tell us? What does he think about which draft picks will make the biggest impact right away? Obviously, Delane needs to. He better. The Peter Woods, R. Mason Thomas, I can see all of them making a big impact. Kennedy, Emmett Johnson. The only one that you would expect not to play at all, he would hope not to play, is Nussmeier, the quarterback. Because if he's playing, then something's going wrong, Deebs, unless it's in mop-up duty at some point.
We are off track.
Right. That would not be good. But I'm excited to talk to Jesse to see what he thinks about what the Chiefs did and how they addressed some of their problems in the draft. So, fingers crossed there. Also, did you see this stat from Nick Kurtz, who's one of the more impressive young sluggers in Major League Baseball? And, of course, the Royals are going up against Nick Kurtz and the A's right now. And this is the guy that was drafted right there in that area of Jack Caglione, and has been, he's been really good early in his career for the A's, and they got him in the leadoff. But he walked last night, and the reason that's significant is he has drawn a walk in 18 consecutive games now. That's the most consecutive games with a walk in a single season since at least, let's see, 2002. You can guess who that was. Barry Bonds.
Yeah. Any walk stat
Right.
is your first guess, yeah.
So he's drawn a walk in 18 consecutive games. Last person to do that in a single season, Barry Bonds in 2002 had 18. Before that, Ted Williams in 1941 had 19. And then the top since 1900, Roy Cullenbine in 1947 had 22 consecutive games where he's drawn a walk. And so that's what you're looking at. Roy Cullenbine in 1947, Ted Williams in 1941, and Barry Bonds in 2002. And now Nick Kurtz in 2026 with 18 consecutive games where he's drawn a walk. And he's only, 4 away from the top number since 1900, which is wild. And considering he's still in his second year, young player with that kind of approach and plate discipline and that kind of power, very impressive. So let's see if the Royals can get through a game today without walking him and end the streak. That would be nice.
Yeah, it'd be great to end his streak.
That is impressive, though,
Oh, my God, yeah.
I feel like that surprises me that no one's had a streak that long since Bonds, and then before that, you're looking at the 40s.
Yeah, you're looking at Triple Crown Ted Williams.
It seems it would have been, I don't know. Am I wrong? Does that surprise you?
Yeah, kind of. It just 18 games, man. That's a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So, I'm trying to think of other players. Since I've been alive, at least you would at least think, oh, that guy drew a lot of walks.
Right.
And I mean, those guys not even close, I'm sure.
Yeah, nobody was like Bonds. That was the easy.
Yeah.
When I asked you the last
That's the
person
easiest
was.
one ever.
Right. No, for sure. And hopefully Noah Cameron. And look, that's been somewhat of a problem for the Royals pitchers, walks.
Yeah, walks in general. I mean, the bullpen walks a lot of guys. I mean, Reagan's has walked a lot of guys. Pretty much everybody's.
So
kinda
last
had the
time he
walks.
finally settled down.
Yeah, last start was awesome.
Right. What about Cameron? He's got an ERA over 5. You worried about him at all? What have you seen from him so far this year?
Just not as sharp as last year so far. I mean, walks have hurt him too. And it hasn't been as sharp. So hopefully today, he's getting ahead of guys like Boddicker likes and putting guys away and making guys hit on his terms.
Yeah, just get him in rhythm, because if you look at what he's done, I mean, so far this year, and look, he was such. I mean, imagine where the Royals would have been last year without Noah Cameron. I mean, he was so good for so long.
Just consistent.
Yeah. He bailed them out, especially when you factor in the number of injuries that the Royals had to endure with their starting pitchers last year, and I know that's why they were so excited about having the depth we talked about earlier this year. Now that depth is dwindling. But in his last few starts, going back to, I mean, he was off to a good start this year, because his first 2 starts, he gave up 1 run against Minnesota, 1 run against Cleveland, but since then, against the White Sox, 5 1/3, 6 hits, 2 walks, 5 earned runs. Next start against the Yankees, 4 innings pitched, 7 hits, 2 walks, 5 earned runs. And then last time out was better, and they won the game against the Angels, but 6 1/3, 8 hits, 3 walks, 3 earned runs, had 6 strikeouts. And so that was obviously better than what he had been the 2 previous starts. But overall right now for Cameron, 26 1/3 innings, 31 hits, 23 strikeouts, 9 walks. His ERA is just above 5 at 5.13. So you'd love to see him get things back to the way they looked last year in his first couple of starts, limit Oakland, and give the Royals a chance to get the series win in the rubber match against the A's in Sacramento that'll be this afternoon just after 2:10. All right, we're going to talk more baseball with Buster Olney at 7. Then we'll get into the draft with Adam Kaplan at 7:30. Now that we've had time to settle in on this, Deebs, I've kind of gone back and forth on this. What has been what draft pick now, a few days later, what do you declare your favorite draft pick that the Chiefs made?
I'm gonna say R. Mason Thomas, just because it shows that they're willing to go outside of their mold a little bit when it comes to defensive end. It just shows that they're adapting a little bit, maybe.
Willing to get a guy that doesn't have the prototypical size, a speed rusher that can get to the quarterback.
Yeah, it just means they're broadening their horizons to try to get to the quarterback. And hopefully him and Karlaftis and Gelati and, the defensive tackles in the mix, the Joneses, the Norman Lotts, the Woods, they can yin and yang their skill sets in order to develop some form of a pass rush. So aside from obviously Delane being, the one we expect the most from, I'm excited to see how we, form this new pass rush with all this different mix of guys they've acquired.
I'm now, there's reasons to be excited about each one of them. I could talk myself into it, but
yeah,
I'm now starting to get more excited about Peter Woods, I think, more than anybody.
Yeah.
Because I think, and again, the expectations are Delane is going to need to be a stud right off the bat because of where he's picked and what they gave up for him. And I expect that. And I'm with you about R. Mason Thomas. I think it's a positive sign they're willing to maybe admit that what they've been trying to do as far as the pass rush hasn't been working exactly the way they wanted. And so just go out and get a guy that can just flat out get to the quarterback. And I like that. But for Peter Woods, again, you go back to what he was considered before the season, and some people had him in their top 5. Most people had him projected as a top 10 pick. The Chiefs feel like his responsibilities changed at Clemson, and what he was asked to do changed. And so that may have limited his production. And we heard Stan Weber talk about it, Tim Grunhard. There's a lot of talent at Clemson this past year, but there were some funky things going on there. And there were a lot of guys that didn't live up to what they were supposed to do last year at Clemson. Clemson didn't live up to their projections. And so you get a guy in Peter Woods, and they've been chasing defensive tackle. If you think about, now in retrospect, it did come off as this just weird kind of desperation where, like, Mike Pennell didn't make the team, and then they trade for Derek Nottie, and they're just trying to almost piecemeal together the interior of the defensive line to go along with Chris Jones, and then they bring Pennell back, and it just ain't working. And we've seen the Chiefs in the past, and in Omar Norman Lott gets hurt, and so we've seen the Chiefs in the past when they identify a problem, they will overcompensate the following year. And so not only do you have Chris Jones coming back, but they went out and spent free agent money and gave more money to Kyrie's Tonga than he was projected to get in free agency. But an important piece to that interior defensive line rotation, and they take him from New England, and then you're hoping Omar Norman Lott comes back and can live up to the potential that led you to draft him in the second round, and then they go and spend this number 29 pick on Peter Woods. And now you look at the resources they've invested instead of trying to, half-ass it, not half-ass it, but bringing in guys from the past or trade a 6th-round pick for this guy, or, hey, you know what? We can't find anyone. Let's at least get a guy that knows the system that we can trust. Bring Derek Nottie back. Okay, now let's bring Mike Pennell back. Now you've got the gigantic investment you've made in one of the best ever in Chris Jones. You go out and you spend good free agent money on Kyrie's Tonga from the Patriots. You have the 2nd-round pick invested in Omar Norman Lott, and so hopefully he can be healthy and good to go. And then you spend another high pick, 1st-round pick, in Peter Woods. And so, man, if it plays out the way they hope, this goes from being a position to where they were just trying to, put something together, almost, on the run, trying to bring back old players and trying to, get some type of production, to now you can look at it, and it very well could and should, considering the gigantic investment. If you talk about contract extension with Chris Jones, free agent contract with Tonga, 2nd-round pick with Omar Norman Lott, 1st-round pick with Peter Woods, defensive tackle, interior defensive line better be a strength. And if you're worried about the depth at edge, after Karlaftis and R. Mason Thomas and Gelati, by the way, there's some investment right there too as well.
Yeah, because Gelati was, a 3rd-round pick?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then if you cross your fingers and hope that Felix Anudike-Uzama, as a former 1st-round pick, can come in and he should be highly motivated, trying to show something where he can get a contract in free agency. If you're worried about the depth there, then maybe you're hoping the versatility of Chris Jones and Peter Woods and Omar Norman Lott and those guys will help make up for any deficiencies with the edge rushing. But, now you talk about the defensive line. Now at least you can squint a little bit and think, okay, now they've got numbers. We've seen the last 2 teams that won the Super Bowl just put out a pass rush in waves that has overwhelmed the opponents. But you think about, like you mentioned with Gelati, 3rd-round pick, Chris Jones, millions and millions of dollars in the contract extension. Omar Norman Lott, 2nd-round pick. Peter Woods, 1st-round pick. Kyrie's Tonga, big free agent signing.
Yeah, the investment in the position just keeps coming at you the more you look at it.
Karlaftis, 1st-round pick and extension. FAU, 1st-round pick. Gelati, 3rd-round pick. R. Mason Thomas, 2nd-round pick. They haven't ignored it, and now they're just throwing numbers at it. So they got to get, and they're going to. It would be shocking if they didn't get more production out of that defensive line. But I'm down for it, man. I'm here. It's not the names I thought it would be, but
Yeah, I mean, what more can we ask for as fans of the team? You know, they've done a lot to address this, like you mentioned with all that.
I think some people are asking for Cam Jordan.
Yeah,
That's what more.
I
we'll
mean,
see.
that's a name that keeps getting thrown out there in terms of somebody to add maybe on a relatively friendly contract at the tail end of his career.
And look, they've had that history of doing that.
Yeah.
Whether it's Carlos Dunlap or Melvin Ingram or, fill in the blank. They're not afraid to bring in veteran edge rushers who they think could be the final piece to add to what they already have that could get them over the hump. And maybe that's the case where maybe it's Cam Jordan this year. They have a history of bringing in veteran free agents closer to training camp or, in training camp. Even remember back when they brought in late Terrell Suggs, They'll bring in a guy that maybe could add some veteran leadership and production that maybe got chasing a ring.
Yeah.
That's motivation
and I like
as well.
what you said about veteran leadership. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's played for one team his whole career, and, I mean, I've never heard anything bad come out about him that I can think of at least.
Now, if they got the money, I'd be down with it.
Yeah.
Now, before, when it looked like there was going to be more put on his plate, no, you've got to – he can't be the answer.
Exactly.
He's just got to be a guy that they add.
A little cherry on top.
Yes. The icing on the cake. The cake's already in the oven. The cake's baking with all these investments they've made in the defensive line. You add him, and maybe then it's a finished
A
product.
decorated birthday cake.
Oh, really?
Yeah, something nice.
All right, let's do it. All right, let's take a break. Coming up, we're going to talk to Buster Olney from ESPN. We'll get Buster's thoughts on what's going on with the Royals and everything else around baseball. Adam Kaplan, Gary Dieter, Anthony Sherman, Jesse Newell. Let's roll. It's a Thursday morning, last month of April. Get in where you fit in on Sports Radio 810 WHP.